Welcome to Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. With over 20 years of real estate experience and selling over 150 homes a year, Laura Sanders is the #1 RE/MAX agent in the state of Florida for 2021. Join us each week as we discuss how to make money through buying and flipping homes, to renting versus selling, and everything in between. To join the conversation, call in live 888-994-4995, Studio A.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I am your host, Laura Sanders. Every week we talk about something that will help you save a little money, make a little money, and help you navigate this crazy world that we live in. And today we're going to talk about insurance and what is going on in the marketplace. Insurance has becoming something that is of great conversation at every dinner table, and people are saying that they're leaving the state of Florida because insurance is too expensive. So today we have Brandon with us, and he is from Goosehead Insurance. So welcome, Brandon.
Thanks for having me. It's always a good time. I like the glasses.
Oh, thank you. Sometimes, real estate gives you a headache, and having the contacts in your eyes sometimes just, feel good. So tell us about what's going on in the marketplace. I hear some people are pulling out of the marketplace, some of the companies. I mean, what is the typical number of companies that are available to a buyer or a homeowner right now for insurance?
Well, that's a really good question. And there's so many things that are at play. But typically for my average client, I have, within the admitted market, which is your standard insurance market, I usually have 2 to 4 insurance companies I can go to. Now we have a secondary market, which we can talk about sometimes, and there's a lot more options there, but they play by a different set of rules. It's less regulated. We only usually go there for like certain scenarios, not for everybody. Okay. But what's been interesting this past couple weeks is, so we have 2 insurance marketplaces, the admitted and the not admitted marketplace, and that's in the whole country. It's like that. But in Florida, we almost have 2 different markets, because we have all of Florida, and then we have Tri-County, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach. And we had one carrier this week pretty much pull out of all of Miami-Dade and Broward, and another carrier pull out of the whole Tri-County area. And they did it at the drop of a hat. And so they said one day, hey, you've got a couple days to bind anything. Outside of a couple days from now at noon, you can't do we're not doing any business in these counties. Okay. Which is huge.
Did they give any reasoning behind it?
I spoke with one of them today, and the underwriter I spoke to just said, hey, we don't really know, but the book isn't as strong, the book of business. Typically, and what I spoke with this underwriter about is, unfortunately in South Florida, we see a lot more fraud here than the rest of the state. And so down here, it's a little bit different. In addition to that, this is interesting, you'll like this. Miami-Dade and Broward are in what's called the HVHZ, which is high velocity hurricane zone. I'm gonna ask you that a couple weeks from now. You got to remember it. High velocity hurricane zone. Okay,
high velocity hurricane zone.
So the building requirements are different in the HVHZ. And insurance is different in the HVHZ. So let's just take your standard house. In Broward, North Broward, right on the line of Palm Beach, it has all hurricane impact protection except the garage. Well, a lot of companies are not going to give any credit for discount for hurricane protection.
Right.
In Broward. Now, if that house was over the Loxahatchee Canal in Boca, they would get a credit, because Palm Beach is not in the HVHZ.
So if you're Miami-Dade or Broward.
Correct.
And you don't, so if I sell a house that's in Boca and they're missing the garage door as hurricane rated, but everything else is rated, they're going to get to write it all off.
With most companies, they're going to give a discount.
And that's because they're not located in the HVHZ.
What's that mean?
High velocity hurricane zone.
That's it. Correct.
Look at that. I'm smarter than I thought.
It's because you got the glasses on.
Oh, okay. So because they're not located in that, they're able to get that. So anything moving further up that way is going to get that discount.
It's easier to get discounts, yeah.
Okay. So I guess like the keys and everything else, they're done.
Well, the keys is kind of its own
Animal?
Its own animal. Yeah. I mean, just the algorithm on pricing and the keys is
Yeah, so if I was
way
to buy,
different.
you know how they have the brand new homes in Parkland and it was like insurance was like what, $1,500?
It's so cheap.
Right? When they were brand new. I
Uh-huh.
don't know if that's still the same if now
Yeah.
that they're 5 years old, some of these homes, right? But now if you go to the Keys and you buy a brand new built property, it's still like $12,000 a year.
Yeah, because of where it's at.
Even if it's like raised off the ground or
I mean, it still helps, but that it's raised off the ground. But the thing is the chance. I mean, how many storms? Let's look at the past few years. How many storms have rolled through and the outer bands of a storm hit the Keys, but not Broward County?
right.
A lot of them do, and we have one out there right now that looks like it might be.
Oh,
might
we have
be
something
forming.
brewing?
Possibly.
What's its name?
But
No, it's
it
not
hasn't
like,
been named
It's not
yet.
Laura yet.
It's
right?
got a 50. It's got a 50% chance of development over the next 7 days, which is the last that I've looked. What's interesting is they give a 48-hour chance of development in a 7-day or a 5-day or 7-day. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's 5-day chance of development, and it's 0% in 48 hours, and I think it was 50% in 5 days. So we'll see what happens, but it's coming right at Florida.
What part?
Like it's coming right
At
right.
us?
Florida's in the middle of the little cone it shows.
Nice. So remind everybody out there, because listen, we have buyers that are listening. We have new agents that are listening. So, you know, some people are very attuned to what's going on and how this all works. Explain how, when we do get in a cone, what is the effect on insurance for everybody?
Yeah, so this is really, really important. If you're under contract on a house right now, you want to get your insurance in place as fast as you can. And I don't say that as a salesman. I say that as you don't want to get into a position where you can't get insurance and you're trying to close. So what happens is insurance companies put out something called a moratorium. And a moratorium is basically the insurance company saying, from right now until we tell you otherwise, you cannot bind any insurance policies. You can't purchase them. You can't do anything. You can get quotes, but that's about it.
Right.
Quotes are typically only good for 30 days. And so if you need your policy bound in order to close, and we have a moratorium in effect, well, we can't do anything. We can't do nothing. Our hands are tied. And usually that comes into play when there's a storm, we're in the cone, and the cone is usually 3 to 5 days out, and they say, hey, stop everything.
Okay. So we're going to go to commercial break, but when we come back, I want to talk about what's going on with Citizens and why and when this new requirement is going to come into effect with the flood insurance. So check out our awesome sponsors, and when we come back, we are going to talk about what's going on with flood and Citizens.
Whether you're buying, selling, refinancing, or building your dream home, you have a lot riding on your loan specialist. Max Fish, a top 1% mortgage loan officer in the nation, will give you a same-day qualifying quote. Max Fish is committed to providing his customers with mortgage services that exceed their expectations. Ensuring that you make the right choice for you and your family is his ultimate goal. Contact Max Fish today at 954-729-6933 or max.fisch@nwmcorp.net.
At JK Closing Attorneys, we do all of the same things that a title company does, but with the benefits of being a law office. We can help with residential real estate, short sales, commercial real estate, refinances, 1031 exchanges, and FIRPTA withholding.
Contact JK Closing Attorneys today at 954-332-3111. Again, that is 954-332-3111.
You have been watching Making Money with Laura. For more information, contact Laura Sanders at 954-650-0827 or visit her website at thelaurazell.com. And now back to the show.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I am your host, Laura Sanders. So today we're talking about insurance, and insurance is a really big thing right now that we're dealing with buying homes. And you know, between the taxes and insurance, it's not the mortgage that's the problem. Okay, I mean, maybe, you know, our mortgage broker Max is a problem, but the actual mortgage itself, it's not a problem. It's the insurance, it's the taxes. So I'm sitting here today, we're talking with Brandon, and we're trying to figure out, like, how do we, like, I feel like we're gonna have more problems now, right? Because now you're gonna have to get flood insurance even if you're not in a flood zone with Citizens.
Yeah, so this is a fun topic.
Okay.
Flood insurance, just so we clarify, because there's a lot of confusion around this. Flood insurance is rising water from the outside. So a lot of people think, what if my water heater bursts open and my house floods?
It's not.
That's not flood insurance. Flood insurance, if you have a hurricane, water's coming in through your ceiling and it floods inside, that's not flood insurance. Flood insurance is water rising from the outside. So, like if you have storm surge or you have a lake behind your house, it fills up so much and then comes.
Okay,
in
let's
your house.
let's not scare people about the lake coming up, because some
It's
lakes,
very unlikely.
Right, because most lakes are they're man-made, or they're monitored, and they're being able
Correct.
to be drained from usually the water districts.
Yeah, I just
So-
reviewed an email from my water district this past week, and they said we monitor the storms, and if
They
we
will.
see a storm coming,
right.
we'll
So let's
lower
not
it.
scare people, because
No.
a lot of people are, you know, the first thing that people say to me, they're coming here from New York, they're like, oh, is it going to flood because the, you know, the flood, because there is the lake in the
Yeah,
back. And I'm
or
like,
canal.
no, that is something you don't need to worry about.
And it has to come up so much, and then you've got usually a 4 to 6 inch step into your house that it would have to go up that also. That's a lot of water. I mean, we'll have 4 to 6 inches of rain, and people say that, well, it was a very heavy rain.
Right.
So to get that on top of everything else, no. So it's just unlikely. So here's the deal. You have, everybody's in a flood zone. And what the flood zone is named, which the flood zone map in Broward is changing just a couple days. And so more people are going to be in a flood zone than were before.
Interesting.
And so the name of the flood zone is what matters. So you have, typically it starts with A or X. If it's X, you're not in what's called a special flood hazard area.
Okay.
If it starts with A, you're usually in a special flood hazard area. And so what's happening is with Citizens, if you're in a special flood hazard area, which a lot of people are going to be, you are required to get flood insurance if you have Citizens and you have hurricane coverage on your policy. They're requiring it right now.
Okay.
Now, if you're not in a flood zone, you're not in a special flood hazard area, Citizens has a slow rollout to requiring flood, where eventually everybody that has hurricane coverage with Citizens is going to be required to get flood.
So let's help our listeners understand. If I see that a property is in what's called a storm surge area, what does that mean?
So storm surge areas are typically close to the ocean.
Okay.
So what happens is let's think of this on like a crazy large scale. Okay. Just so people understand.
Like you said, one of those movies like from Asia, and all of a sudden a tsunami comes.
You have a tsunami that comes,
Right.
which that happens, and then it brings all this ocean water inland. Well, that's what we would call storm surge. So you have a hurricane that comes and it brings all this water is coming in. A tsunami is
scary.
a huge.
Yeah, I
like-
mean that's like, what's the? I mean, since you do insurance, I mean, and maybe you don't know. I'm just asking. We're just talking, right? But what is the likelihood that like a tsunami? I don't.
I mean, tsunamis typically come from earthquakes, and thankfully we don't have those here. But
Right.
there's maps that you can go look up online of the likelihood of storm surge in areas. And as a hurricane gets closer, they have warnings and like these color-coded maps of here's the level of storm surge we expect to see in this area from, you know, let's say Vero Beach to West Palm Beach. We're expecting 6 foot of storm surge and then whatever going down. And so it's a good thing to look into, which is why on the coast, insurance is more expensive and flood insurance is really expensive when you get closer to the ocean.
So that's why it says like, so, because sometimes when we have IMAP and I click at the bottom and I look, and that's probably not even going to be updated come when the...
Hopefully it is.
I don't know, they're still showing like, I was clicking on for schools the other day and it was still showing a certain school for a certain area still, even though I know that they said they did some rezoning, unless it just wasn't passed yet, but I just don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I would just say it's their systems. But it's always good with flood to go to FEMA and check the FEMA flood map.
So they just go to www.fema.com?
I don't know the website off the top of my head. You can just Google FEMA.
Okay.
What I would say is FEMA flood map.
Okay.
And you go in there and then you click like the map service center and you can plug in your address. And usually it's slow. That website's super slow. It drives me nuts. But you can see on there what flood zone you're in.
Okay.
And then you could also now, because the new flood map is coming out, you can look up the updated flood map and you can see.
Already on FEMA.
Yeah, you can see if you're in a special flood hazard area.
Okay. Any tips or tricks right now for our listeners to help them reduce the cost of insurance?
Well, there's one other thing I want to mention before we go into this, is this citizens rollout. So for anybody with Citizens, this is really important to know.
Okay.
If you have hurricane coverage on your Citizens policy and you're not in a flood zone, right now you're not required to have flood insurance unless your coverage A is 600,000 and above.
Okay.
Which isn't a lot of properties. I would say just on a rough scale, probably a property around 3,500 square foot would qualify for that.
Okay.
And of course, there's a lot of other variables there. But starting January 1 of 2025,
Okay.
any property coverage A 500,000 and above with Citizens is going to require flood. The next year, any property 400,000 and
so
above
that's why it's the rollout. Okay.
is going to require it.
Okay.
And then the year after, every property is going to require it. Now, that doesn't include condos because condos are different, and typically condos have their own flood insurance by the association. But any HO3 policy, which is just your standard homeowners policy, where you're insuring inside and outside, that's what this pertains to.
Interesting.
But as far as tips and tricks, one thing I like to tell people when you're purchase newer construction. You're going to save a lot. You spoke about that earlier, which another company just backed out that was writing more, and now they're only writing 2 years and newer. That's it.
Oh, wow.
Just a couple weeks ago, that change happened. Second to that.
So how many options you have? 4? 3? 2?
It's dwindled a lot in the past couple weeks. But the second thing, and I think we've spoken about this before, are you want to have smoke detectors and those type of things, but water detectors, same thing as a smoke detector. If it detects water, then it's going to go off like a smoke detector, and you can go shut your main water off. But what happens if you're not at home and you're out of town on vacation that we dream of going on?
What's that?
There's something called an automatic water shutoff valve, and it goes on your main water line coming into the house. And if it detects through its little techie thing that there's a water leak in your property, it's going to shut the water off automatically. And most of them are Wi-Fi connected. In some of them, there's a third layer where it connects with the water detectors.
Oh.
If it's the same brand, and then it'll shut off automatically.
And do you have any recommendations on who they can call or who they can hire for this?
Well, typically you need a plumber. Sometimes you need an electrician, because like the one I've been looking at that I want to get for my house, it has to have electricity close by.
Okay.
And so if it doesn't, you need a plug close by. And usually your main water line coming in is outside. And so you need to make sure it's in conduit and done right so it doesn't get all wet.
It's always something, huh?
There's always something.
Yeah.
So sometimes you need an electrician.
Okay. All right. Well, I know that we've talked about the rollout. We've talked about the cost and how expensive it's getting. We've talked about some tips and tricks. What is the best way for everyone to get a hold of you if they are looking to get some insurance or quote out their policy that they currently have? I mean, when's the best time to do that?
The best time is now. And I know that's a salesy answer, but the reality is I had another carrier this past week that I write a ton of business with. Rate change. And so now their rates are higher.
Right.
And I had no control over it. And it's unfortunate. It is what it is. And so the other companies that backed out, well, I didn't know until last minute. They didn't tell us as agents. And so now I got to put you with a different company. And chances are I sent you the quote with them because it was the best price or the best value. And so, yeah, you don't want to wait to do those things. Now there is a misconception.
So you can change it. Because I always thought, but I think that doesn't make any sense, that you had to wait till your policy was coming due in order to cancel and rewrite. But that must not be true.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
So there's certain things you can and can't change in the policy during the policy period.
No, if I wanted to go to a
change that
new
specifically.
carrier.
Correct. But if you wanted to go to a new carrier, well, you just got to be careful, because most insurance companies in the admitted marketplace, the standard marketplace, they're going to prorate your premium back to you based on the amount of days, minus any fees, which usually there's not a ton of fees. Now, the secondary or non-admitted or excess and surplus lines market, the majority of those carriers have anywhere between a 25% and 100% minimum earned premium, which means if it's 100%, it's fully earned. They're not giving you any money back. And if it's 25%, well, they're not going to give you any money back for the first 3 months, because that's 25% of a year policy. So you just got to be careful that you know what type of policy you have.
Okay.
So if you don't know what type of policy you have, give me a call. I work all the time, weekends, evenings. You can give me a call. It's my cell phone number, 954-326-9842.
And if you're thinking about selling or buying and you want to know how to get your home set up to sell in the best condition possible, what I also do is I do get quotes from Brandon prior to going to market to make sure that buyers qualify, because people don't realize, especially when you get those out-of-state lenders, they don't understand that our insurance is not $200 a month, which would be $2,400 a year. We wish it was, it used to be, but our insurance happens to be a little more pricey than that. So that is another service that we offer to make sure that the buyer is going to qualify, because everything is based on 12 months. So 12 months of insurance divided by 12, that tells you what your monthly cost is going to be. And typically we're seeing somewhere around $500 to $600 a month just in insurance. Typically. It depends on what you're doing, but you know, some of these older homes. So if you're thinking about buying or selling and you're not sure how to maneuver this whole process, definitely give me a call. My name is Laura Sanders with RE/MAX Direct, 954-650-0827, and I can definitely help you get your home into tip-top shape and make sure it shows in its best light possible. And if you're thinking about getting some insurance, whether you need to get a new policy, you need to rewrite the policy that you currently have, Brandon can definitely help you. He is with Goosehead Insurance, and he can be reached at
954-326-9842.
And I want to thank you, as always, for taking the time out on your Thursday evening to listen to Making Money with Laura Sanders. And until next week, until I can teach you some other tips and tricks, which is how to save some money or to actually know what the heck's going on in this crazy world, right? Tune in next week to Making Money with Laura Sanders. Thank you and have a great night.
Thank you for tuning in for Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. To join the conversation, call us at the studio, 888-994-4995 Studio A, or contact Laura directly at 954-650-0827. Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. We look forward to seeing you next week.